On the 100th anniversary of New Mexico's statehood, it is fascinating to journey back to see what New Mexico was like a century ago. Filmmaking came here at the same time as statehood, and early films provide an opportunity to travel back to 1912, when the land of enchantment became the 47th state. Perhaps these movies are the closest thing we have to a time machine. Thanks to the railroad and the introduction of the automobile at the beginning of the 20th century, New Mexico was no longer remote beyond compare. The state was being promoted and some might say exploited as an exotic land and place of opportunity. Promoters saw our distinct history, diverse cultures, and dramatic landscape as a tremendous lure. Unfortunately, these complex elements were often distilled into a single, easy-to-grasp message. From today's perspective, it is indeed intriguing to see the New Mexico of the early 20th century. It's equally revealing to see the obvious naivete and cultural insensitivity of the time. Today we like to talk of all the great movies being made in New Mexico. It was in 1912, however, that Hollywood's elite first arrived. Legendary filmmaker D.W. Griffith produced New Mexico's first two-reeler motion picture, A Pueblo Legend, starring, of all people, Mary Pickford. The other star of the film was the location. The great director said, quote, "Isleta Pueblo offered some of the finest scenic opportunities ever put into a picture," end quote. The story takes place in what the film describes as a mystical and primeval setting, quote, "before the coming of the Spaniards," end quote. A handsome war captain, great brother, is sent on a quest to find, quote, "the sky stone of happiness," end quote. A Hopi maiden, played by Pickford, falls in love with great brother. On his quest, great brother encounters enemy Apaches, and a dramatic battle ensues. Eventually, it is our heroine, Mary Pickford, who saves great brother and finds the stone of happiness. The overt theatricality and the way Native Americans were portrayed in the film offended Isleta residents, and Griffith was actually detained at the Pueblo for a few hours. At the end, Mary Pickford and great brother are finally united, wrapped together in a wedding blanket. Albuquerque's sensational trackside Alvarado Hotel was a huge draw for railroad travelers and filmmakers alike. In 1912, Max Sennett, soon to be of Keystone Cops fame and one of early Hollywood's most prolific filmmakers, stopped in Albuquerque to make The Tourists, a short comedy of errors. With the Alvarado and Old Town as backdrops, a party of tourists take advantage of the short stop to admire the work of Indian sellers. Distracted with buying, Trixie, played by Mabel Normand, and her friends miss their train, and Trixie wanders off to do some sightseeing. She asks a local chief to give her a tour. Much to the displeasure of his wife. Trixie is in hot water, and the chase is on. But it all ends well. She hops aboard the eastbound train, waving farewell to Albuquerque. For sheer bravado, no early New Mexico film compares to the 1913 classic, The Rattlesnake. The The writer, producer, director, and star was the then famous and now forgotten Romaine Fielding. In 1913, fans voted the flamboyant Fielding to be Hollywood's most popular actor. In 1914, a disastrous fire at the Lubin Film Company incinerated the majority of Fielding's films, and along with them, his place in film history. He made The Rattlesnake in Las Vegas, New Mexico, after making films in Silver City. The Las Vegas Optic newspaper reported Fielding left Silver City saying there was nothing left to blow up. The Rattlesnake is a tale of obsession. A critic of the time said Fielding's performance personified, quote, the venom of jealousy, end quote. In the film, Fielding portrays Tony, whose former love, the beautiful Inez, marries a surveyor and has a family. Tony goes from being a carefree vaquero to a man insane with jealousy. To seek revenge, he takes up with an unusual conspirator, a rattlesnake. At the climax of the film, Fielding places the rattlesnake in the surveyor's bed. Unexpectedly, the surveyor's child gets into the bed. Seeing his plan has gone tragically wrong, Fielding rushes in and saves the child. Killing the snake, his sanity returns. That same year, Romaine Fielding outdid himself. In the hills above Las Vegas, he produced his futuristic blockbuster, The Golden God. Set in the 1950s, labor and the consolidated wealth of the world, controlled by the Golden God, are at war. He recruited thousands of locals for extras and brought the first aeroplanes into New Mexico to take part in the battle scenes. Unfortunately, no copy of this film has been found. The Rattlesnake is one of the very few remaining examples of Romaine Fielding's work. Shifting gears, the theme of the 1917 adventures in Kit Carson Land is discovering northern New Mexico through something that was quite novel and adventurous at the time, an automobile trip. Hoping to capitalize on the national craze for automobile touring, this was the first film produced by the New Mexico Tourist Promotion Bureau, which notes, quote, the greatest scouts and Indian fighters blazed a trail for tourist and home builder of today, end quote. Although a tourist film, it gives us a remarkable look at turn-of-the-century northern New Mexico, careening through rugged mountain roads, negotiating the Rio Grande Gorge, truly gives us a sense of the difficulty of these early trips north. It is fascinating to actually drive into Taos Plaza, dodging carriages and covered wagons. It is a step back in time. Promoting New Mexico was the goal of the ambitious 1915 Panama, California exposition film that documented communities across the state as modern places with abundant resources. Around New Mexico, parades were the rage, like this one where proud Albuquerqueans show off their finest, including the latest in modern living, such as electricity. To wow the crowds, the fire department charges down Central Avenue in a dramatic exhibition run. In the Members Valley near Deming, a procession of farming equipment travels into the fields. Gigantic combustion engine tractors look like bizarre mechanical beasts towering above the following workhorses and mules. Electric pumps drew 2,000 gallons of water per minute from the ground to feed new fields of alfalfa, beans, cotton, and other crops. It was important to show that New Mexico was no longer a desert. and with the use of modern technology, water was plentiful. Indeed, farming was now possible on an unprecedented scale, and one could prosper. No wonder why the folks in the film are happily dancing between rows of crops in their well-irrigated fields. And to end this journey back in time, we see New Mexico was indeed a place of the future. In 1902, Tucumcari was little more than a railroad camp made up of tents. In this 1917 film, we meet school children in front of their new school, dressed in bright, new clothes. They are cheerfully waving handkerchiefs, heralding great beginnings and a bright future.